Story time of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. So I never really liked my stepmom in the first place because she was a little controlling over my dad. And I just knew that she hated me and I really hated her too. But my dad was in love and he seemed happy, so I didn't really say anything. And my dad would always take me to lunch on Saturdays and Sundays. And we'd have like a dad-daughter bonding day, I guess. And me and my dad were just super close. And every single weekend, me going to lunch with him would start an argument between them two because she said I was taking time away from them two. My dad really never chose sides, but I never really got involved in the relationship as much as I hated her because I just loved seeing my dad happy. Also, at this time, I was 15. And what I'm about to say next might sound just a little crazy and unbelievable, but I'm not sure who she was on the phone with. But while on the phone with somebody, she was talking about getting rid of me. Mind you, my mom had passed away when I was younger, and I really had no other family to go to. Now, this is where the story takes a turn for the worse and she tries to get rid of me. I'm running out of time for the crazy part 2. Part 2 of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. Continuing on with the story, I don't know who she was on the phone with, but I overheard her on the phone saying that she was going to get rid of me. And honestly, I didn't really care and I didn't really think anything of it because I knew she was crazy, but I didn't think she was that crazy. So all of a sudden, she started making me breakfast. And I'm not a breakfast person. I can't eat right when I get up. So every time she would make me breakfast, I'd be like, thanks, but I'm not hungry. And she would get so mad. Like, so freaking mad. I'm not going to get into all the little details, but comes to find out, she was putting rat poison in my food. She had set up cameras in my room. And I don't know what kind of sense this makes. I think she's just crazy, but she started to hide snakes in my room and claim it was my fault that the snakes were coming in my room. Yeah, doesn't really make any sense. Once I told my dad and my dad got out of his little in love stage with her, he finally stepped up and said something to her. And she admitted that she wanted me dead. He eventually called the cops, and to this day, she is in jail for attempted murder. Oh, did I forget to mention the day that he broke up with her, she tried to stab me in the throat.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend. So then she called one of my other best friends and said, no, it actually wasn't an accident. And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
Extremely toxic best friend part 2. So pretty much her excuse for that was, oh, well, he said that he was gonna leak my nudes if I didn't send him them again. Which was a lie because literally half the school already had her nudes. So then I started talking to this other boy. And he lived like right down the street from her. So she was like, if you want to go to his house, you can. And I was like, are you sure? And she said, yeah, just go tell my mom. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and told her mom where I was going and went over his house. So I walked back to her house and she literally locked me out. Like her mom had to come open the door for me to let me in. And she was like, oh, it's a good thing you came back when you did. Because I was going to drive you home now and tell your dad everything that you did. And she goes, I don't think you guys should be together because you're unexperienced. And she would always tell me how he flirts with her all the time. So after our friendship ended, she goes, I just felt like it was always a competition between me and you.
Extremely creepy story time on how my aunt passed away. So a little background information. About 5 years ago, my aunt had gotten pregnant. It was really weird because a few months before she got pregnant, the doctor told her that she would never be able to have kids. And her husband had been trying for years. Well, I think like 2 weeks after the baby was born, it had passed away. And I don't really know why. For some reason, my mom won't tell me. Which is weird, but anyways, after that, my aunt just felt like a lot of things weren't going the way that she wanted them to in her life. So she decided to get closer with God. Well, every Sunday night, we go to my grandparents' house for a family dinner. And while we were there, my aunt starts going on this whole rampage. She said that God's not giving her the answers that she needs, and I don't really know what she means by answers. So my grandparents kick her out because she's acting like a psycho. Well, the same night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we hear a knocking on the door. And lo and behold, it's my aunt. So my mom lets her in because she feels bad and feels like she's the only one that will actually listen to my aunt. So she makes everybody sit at the kitchen table. She pulls out a Ouija board from her bag, like for part 2. Creepy story time about how my aunt passed away, part 2. So like I said, she makes us all sit down at the kitchen table and she pulls out a Ouija board. She was like, I found out how I can get some answers. I just feel like I need you guys around me for positive energy. And my family is very, very religious. Like, we don't fuck with that shit. But because my mom felt bad for her, she let her use it in our house. But my mom didn't want my sisters and I around that, so she just sent us to bed. Well, the next morning, I wake up and I ask my mom what happened with the Ouija board situation. My mom just said that it was really scary, because before she thought it was like a load of bullshit, and she said that her and my dad didn't touch the Ouija board, because like I said, they were very religious and did not mess with that stuff. But apparently, it said for her not to buy a house with the numbers 2815. Well, 2 years later, my aunt got remarried, and her husband ended up having 2 kids. So they bought a new house, and no, it didn't have the numbers on it. One of their kids accidentally shattered the glass door, so they went and got a new one, and it came with those exact numbers on it. 2 days later, the house burnt down and nobody survived.
Has anyone ever told you not to do something and that just made you want to do it more? Once, 3 girls went into a video rental store to find a horror movie to watch. They came across an old tape, but the woman at the store told them they weren't allowed to watch it. After one girl stole the tape, they decided to watch it together. But what they would see would terrify them. They pressed play. Suddenly, the room went into darkness, with only the TV on. On screen, they saw a woman tied to a wooden stake. She was surrounded by an angry crowd carrying torches, until one man walked towards the woman and set the wood beneath her feet on fire. The woman began laughing, and as the flames reached her face, she screamed that all who witnessed her death would suffer the same fate in 2 days. Then the tape cut off. The girls were scared, but eventually convinced themselves it was a prank. They decided to return the tape, but when they went back to the store, they found that it was gone. It was just an abandoned building. 2 days later, all 3 girls were found scattered across the city, their bodies burned beyond recognition. When the police investigated the strange coincidence, they found nothing around the girls had been touched by flames at all, except the trash can outside of one of their homes. Everything inside had been turned to ash, except for one mysterious videotape, which was left untouched. What would you do if someone said this to you? Once there was a girl in Korea who got in an elevator in the apartment building that she was living in when a stranger came in and told her something that was absolutely terrifying. This stranger came into the elevator with her and tried to make some small talk. He looked at the elevator buttons and said, "Oh, I see that you live on the 14th floor. I live on the 13th floor." She gave him a friendly response and even tried to flirt a little bit. She thought that he was attractive and wondered if they would get to know each other better. But things quickly took a horrifying turn. When the elevator arrived at the 13th floor, the man got off and said, "See you soon." But as the doors closed, he pulled out a knife from his jacket and with a terrifying smile said, "Upstairs." Then he ran towards the stairs. By this time, it was too late. The elevator doors were already closed. She tried to push as many buttons as possible, but it was of no use. She was stuck inside the elevator, unable to do anything, as the elevator made its way up to the 14th floor.
Story time. So one day this guy comes in and he gets a steak and cheese foot long. So I ask him, any veggies for it? He says, can you cut it in half? So I'm like, okay, I'll do it at the end. And he replies with, no, I want it now. So I'm like, okay, I cut it. I finished the first half of his sandwich. Once we get to the second one, this man tells me he wants sweet peppers. So as I'm putting sweet peppers, he tries to yell at me saying, I don't want no sweet peppers. I said I want it on the side. So I'm like, okay, sir, so what do you want on it? He goes, you're going to do it the way I want to do it. And I'm like, well, sir, I'm not going to do it the way you want to do it. I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it. So what do you want on this sandwich? He goes, I'm leaving, I don't want this no more. So I'm like, bye. Okay, so whatever. He leaves. He pays for the sandwich. He ends up getting it. I go to the back. I start talking shit to my coworkers. I'm ready. I needed some Jesus. I want to fight him. But anyways, I don't. I just go back to work, right? I'm minding my business. Part 2 of my story time. So my coworker comes, he wants to talk to you. So I'm like, you sure he wants to talk to me? And she's like, yeah, he said he wants to talk to you. Well, I'm like, okay, well shit, I want to talk to him too then, the fuck. So I go up to him, I'm like, do you want to sit down? He's like, sure. So I'm like, okay, let's sit down. So we sit down and he's like, well, I'm gonna talk first and I'm gonna let you know why I felt some type of blah blah. This man tells me that since this is my job, that I basically have to suck it up and take it because he's a paying